There are a few things in this world that I will just never understand. Why do I always manage to trip over completely flat ground? How did my landlord misplace my new dishwasher after my old one broke? And why did Virginia bother building this highway that basically no one uses? This is Highway 895. At about 9 miles in length, it's not particularly long, but it makes up for it by not being useful either. The intentions behind this road were threefold. Connect Chippenham Parkway to Interstate 295, create a southwestern bypass around Richmond, and provide access to the airport and future development in eastern Henrico County. It makes sense if you don't think about it too hard, and I imagine that's exactly what the government didn't do. Think about it too hard. Highway 895 is a product of political tunnel vision, when an idea gains so much momentum that no one takes a moment to wonder why people think or like the idea in the first place. Maybe it's just how things have always been, or maybe it's just common sense, so why even give the minor opposition a chance to speak? For Highway 895, nothing was going to stop it from being built. Not the law staying in its way, nor the money Virginia didn't have. But before we get into this specific highway, we need to enter the brain folds of our public servants. Why did the idea of a highway excite them so much? Since 1916, when President Woodrow Wilson signed in the Federal Aid Road Act into law, our institutions have put together a set of basic principles that rationalize why we should spend any money at all building highways. According to the Federal Highway Administration, there are 9 solid benefits to highway building. First is productivity and national output. Transportation improvements can effectively juice businesses' productivity, increasing their output. Highways can make it faster and cheaper for businesses to access what they need to do business, things like raw materials, labor, stuff like that. Naturally, if someone were to build a highway somewhere, a business may want to follow the opportunity and set up shop nearby. Making a business more productive through operations is just a whole lot more work than lowering the barrier to a bigger market to sell it. And just as it can be easier for businesses to access what they need, it can be just as easy to send their finished goods out to customers for less money and in less time. Second is the cost of production and competitiveness, more specifically on businesses' inputs and outputs. Highways can lead to less driver time, which can reduce labor costs, increase freight efficiency, which is how many miles your goods can go in a given amount of time and in a given number of vehicles, reduce vehicle operating costs, and improve transportation reliability. All that can lead to more trade and more money. Third is the labor pool. Since it takes less time for people to reach businesses, they'll have access to a larger group of workers, making it easier to find the right people for the job. It can also mean that people won't have to move cities as much, leading to longer and more meaningful social connections. Fourth is economic structure. The example they put out is that previously self-sufficient areas may specialize in the activities that make them the most money. Then, with all that extra money from selling their expertise to other areas, they can import the things they're not as good as making for local use. Communities can keep honing their skills, creating better products and services across the board. Fifth is geographic impacts. Highways affect income distribution and personal lifestyle, and while the effects can be uneven, the FHWA says that there are no losers, even if the benefits shift from one place to another. Sixth is trade balance. With cheaper, more reliable, and more accessible transportation, businesses can compete in larger markets, improving interstate or international competitiveness. If competition drives innovation, then highways can be an effective catalyst for innovation, leading to better outcomes for everyone. Seventh is safety. Highways are designed to be forgiving, with wider and more lanes, a smoother travel path, and improved road surfaces that can reduce vehicle crashes. Sure, cars are moving much faster on highways than on local roads, but they're more controlled environments. There's less of a chance something unpredictable will happen, making it a safer environment for all drivers. Eighth is lifestyle. Improved transportation gives more people options for more leisure destinations. If people want dining, shopping, or social opportunities offered beyond the confines of their neighborhood, they can feasibly get there. People won't have to move homes as often, they can just drive farther and faster to the new places that they want to go. Finally, ninth is human capital, which I'll just say is human services. Highways can make it easier for people to reach the healthcare and education services they need. Everything here hinges on the idea that a better transportation system has massive downstream benefits for everyone that system serves. Despite the fact that these benefits really apply to any kind of transportation, like a train or a bus, not just a highway, these ideas, so pervasive throughout government for over a century, commanded public opinion towards supporting highway building. And who can blame the public? All this rationale makes highways sound pretty amazing. It's like a cheat code. Wherever you build one, economic prosperity will come. This is clearly the way of the future. So then we built a lot. And my God, did we take this idea and run with it. We got the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1938, thrusting the development of a nearly 40,000-mile highway system. Then we got the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1944, formally designating the National System of Interstate Highways. Then the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1952 threw $25 million at construction. Then the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 tacked another 1,000 miles onto the highway system, created national design standards, and promised the federal government would pay for 90% of construction costs, with states covering the remaining 10%. When the interstate system approached near completion in 1991, the Bureau of Public Roads, not the Federal Highway Administration, estimated that the total cost of the system would be almost $129 billion. And then, all the economic stimulus packages and infrastructure bills over the years put lots of money into our roads too. The 2021 bipartisan infrastructure law set forth about $350 billion to federal highway programs. That's just one law. The Federal Highway Administration puts it best. America's interstate highway system is the world's largest public works project in history. I can't think of a government program or anything maybe other than the entire Department of Defense that the U.S. put its full breadth of resources behind. Well, I mean it is called the Dwight D. Eisenhower National System of Interstate and Defense Highways, so that checks out. This whole going full tilt with highways thing? Richmond was no exception. The Richmond-Petersburg area is home to Interstate 64, 85, 95, 195, and 295, not to mention the U.S. highways authorized way back in 1916, that's routes 1, 33, 60, 250, 301, 360, and 460. To top it all off, the Virginia Department of Transportation had some fun and built its own highways, those being State Route 76, Poway Parkway, 150 Chippenham Parkway, 161 Arthur Ashe Boulevard, 195 Downtown Expressway, which connects to Interstate 195 and to Poway Parkway, 288 World War II Veterans Memorial Highway, and finally, we bring it back home with 895 Pocahontas Parkway. Damn. We only built all these highways in Richmond and across the country because the overwhelming mindset in this country became more highways means more wealth. So it makes sense that the state legislature wanted to hammer that nail even more with the construction of 895. We've been doing this for so long, we've seen what it can do, so clearly we need more of it. At this point, there was a movement to build 895, the southeastern bypass around Richmond to connect Chippenham Parkway to the airport and Verina, but there wasn't the money for it. Normally, this is when you call it a day, shelve the idea, try it again later, or just leave it behind. Nope, not for this proud government. The General Assembly, with strong support from the governor, shoved the Public-Private Transportation Act of 1995 through, opening up a whole new way to finance this highway and others deemed too expensive. Basically, this law allowed private companies to fund the construction of public roads. The Pocahontas Parkway Association entered into contract with Virginia in 1998, getting access to that sweet, sweet taste of $354 million in tax-exempt bonds because of its non-profit status, despite being created by for-profit engineering firms. It opened as a toll highway in 2002, didn't even come close to expected usage, with only 42% of predicted drivers using the highway, so the authority wasn't making enough money to cover the cost of maintenance. An Australian company, Transurban, stepped in, took over, paid off the debt with money they got from the government. This company did go through with actually finishing the highway. Did I mention that it opened unfinished? And built a connection to the airport. Traffic grew enough to the point where Transurban could keep up with operations and maintenance, but it wasn't enough to repay construction costs. Then the recession hit in 2008, so no more new development along the highway. Transurban then failed to repay its loans. Another company swooped in for 2 years, even though they signed a 5-year contract, and now there's another company in charge of it. Maybe part of the reason this highway was such a financial disaster from the very beginning, enough to make Virginia shut its wallet, was because of this insane interchange over 95. It's like 1 billion feet tall because it needed enough clearance for the tall ships that passed underneath. This design, it wasn't enough to kill the project for good? Y'all couldn't have just used West 100 Road further south? And I can personally vouch for how undeveloped Varina is and how lightly traveled 895 is. I go biking on a path next to Route 5, and if I'm feeling frisky, I ride all the way to the highway. I pass by beautiful, rolling hills filled with farms and the occasional small neighborhood. When I turn around at 895, I don't think I've ever seen more than like 3 cars on that highway at once. Despite all this, the then Secretary of Transportation had this to say about 895 when facing scrutiny about the project. "We still got our road." I mean, yeah, you can clearly see it's there, but does that really classify as a win in itself? It's there, but for what reason? Let's just run through the intended reasons for 895 again. Connect Chippenham Parkway to Interstate 295, create a southwestern bypass around Richmond, and provide access to the airport and future development in eastern Henrico County. Yes, we are succeeding on that first goal. That wasn't too hard. If you ignore how astronomically insane that bridge over the James River is. However, going north on 95 and then east on 64 just isn't that much farther. Like, at all. Let's say you're taking a trip from Bensley to Woodview Hills. If you drive on 885, that'll be 20 minutes. If you drive on 95 and 64, that's 31 minutes. Yes, that's obviously a difference, but not only is that a relatively niche scenario, it's only about a 10-minute difference. Hedonic adaptation, a theory that's been thoroughly studied, states that people generally return to a set level of happiness despite positive or negative experiences. By extension, the 10 minutes this hypothetical person may save, would it even matter in the long run? Onto it being a southeastern bypass around Richmond. Yes, it does that too, but it doesn't even do that better than 295. Let's say you're taking a trip from South Prince George to Woodview Hills. A trip on 295 will take you 33 minutes, but a trip on 95 and then 895 will take you 39 minutes. And you have to pay a toll. There is literally no advantage to taking 895 unless all of 295 is closed for a free crash. That's just not good enough of a reason to build a highway. Finally, on to providing access to the airport and future development. Need I remind you that, even though this is one of the core reasons behind 895's construction, it didn't even open with a connection to the airport? Yeah. Sure, there is one today, but that's the same thing as the first scenario. If you're going from Bensley and you have a flight to catch, it'll take you 13 minutes on 895, or 24 minutes on 95 then 64. You know, hedonic adaptation, doesn't even matter, same story. It's just not an astronomical time savings, especially for the toll you gotta pay. As for development and the supposed meteoric rise of Varina, it simply never came. And it's still not happening. In fact, when I ride my bike over there, I pass signs saying, "Don't short pump Varina," specifically referring to Richmond's suburban explosion in western Henrico County. They do not want that here. And judging by the size of those farms that I bike past, they have the wealth and influence to keep new development out. I know I have my mind made up. That's why I made this video in the first place. But hopefully you can at least understand where I'm coming from. Tunnel vision, especially in a political setting where livelihoods, environment, and millions of dollars are at stake. 895, the Pocahontas Parkway just wasn't the wrong solution to the right problem. There wasn't even a problem in the first place. Just a half-century-old idea that highways mean progress, and progress is good. We can see now, hindsight is 2020, we went too crazy with the highways. And I didn't really touch on how credible the Federal Highway Administration's claims were. If you want a deep dive into the economics of highways and the suburb that followed, I highly recommend the book Confessions of a Recovering Engineer and Escaping the Housing Trap. I'm a really big fan of that housing trap book. Very interesting read. In the way that watching tornadoes or car crashes on YouTube is interesting, but still worth a read. But if I were to broadly summarize the ideas from both books, highways didn't provide the sustainable, long-term economic prosperity our decision makers thought they would. We'd probably be in a better place if we just kept building cities and suburbs the way we did before the interstate system existed. That's not to say that we should axe the entire interstate system and replace it with Amtrak. As much as I would want that to happen, we just shouldn't have put all our eggs in one basket. Not with this, not with anything. If you talk to any financial advisor or Google like I do, you'll hear the common wisdom that you should diversify your investments to minimize risk. We need to take this same idea and apply it to our mindset as a nation. Yes, if you bought 1 billion shares of Nvidia before the pandemic, you'd probably have enough money to buy and sell Elon Musk 18 times. But how could you have known it was going to take off? You could have sunk the same amount of money with all the same confidence into shares at GameStop, and then you'd have so little money that Elon Musk would have bought and sold you 18 times by now. Enough people put their full faith and trust into the power of highways. Even when the writing was on the wall, they kept pushing, digging the trench deeper and deeper. No matter who you are, it's important to check yourself. Actively search for new perspectives. Don't live in an echo chamber of those who agree with you. Take the time to understand difference. If more people did, we probably wouldn't have this embodiment of political tunnel vision sitting south of Richmond. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.